So I'm not really a Yu-Gi-Oh player. I don't own any physical cards. I don't play Master Duel, etc., etc. The best way to describe me is I'm probably an enthusiast. I like making stupid decks. I like the history of the game, and I especially like the eccentric, unique, and interesting cards throughout the game's 20 so years of existence. And there's no shortage of these in the game's early years. It's obviously a very experimental period filled with good cards, bad cards, and everything in between. So let's look at some of those. Also, there's going to be a drop in mic quality. I found a better one lying around midway through the recording. So yeah, bye bye. See ya. So the very first set, Legend of the Blue Eyes White Dragon, there were two cards given the honor of being secret rare, the rarest in the whole set. The first one, Gaia the Dragon Champion, which is sort of a anime fan service thing, not practical in any real way, but it's funny, cool. And the other one, obviously, you know him, you love him, Trihorn Dragon. So Trihorn Dragon is this dragon monster. It's level 8. It has 150 less attack than the Blue Eyes White Dragon, and yet it has the honor of being rarer than it in its own set. It is the second strongest monster in forms of attack in Legend of Blue Eyes with, 1850. Funny enough, Gaia, the Dragon Champion, is third with, 2600. But that's really weird to me because like why is this rarer than the Blue Eyes? It's the Legend of the Blue Eyes White Dragon. Why is there just this little goober with no neck, with three horns that protrude like in the wrong direction um, from his skull? Why is it rarer than the Blue Eyes? But it's also sort of strange in the sense that the card text here, an unworthy dragon with three sharp horns sprouting from its head. What is it unworthy of? Why is it unworthy? Is it unworthy of being a secret rare? Is that what it's trying to get at? Because like yeah, kind of. But I do sort of like it in the essence that it's it's the legend of the Blue Eyes White Dragon, but there's this card that isn't quite as mythical or powerful as the Blue Eyes, but it's like not even a legend. It's so rare that you've just never even heard of it. And I think that adds sort of a bit to like kind of like the mystery of the game, or sort of like if you were a elementary schooler on a playground and you pulled this card, you would probably go crazy because of what is this thing? Maybe you'd be sad it's not a Blue Eyes, but like it's still pretty cool. So it's pretty neat overall, pretty interesting, pretty cool. So Meta Raiders was a really big set for the game, obviously, because what else are you gonna do at that point? You obviously have the attribute searchers, Mystic Tomato, Mama Grizzly, Giant Rat, the folks. You had Sangan, Witch, whole bunch of trap cards. Overall, massive set, which like, yeah, you kind of have to follow up Legend of Blue Eyes, which like, wow, pretty cool. I love 700 attack normal monsters. Uh, but in this set, there were like a couple of cards, five, I'm pretty sure, five or six, that are just they have the same exact effect, and the effect is not very good, and the cards are not very good, but they're all just sort of strange in their own unique way. Um, Mystic Lamp, Queen's Double, Leg Hole, Oguchi, Rainbow Flower, and Jin Zone number 7. So Mystic Lamp is kind of the boring of them all. This card could attack directly, cool, and it's just a Mystic Lamp. It's a funny little lamp, not related to Legend in any way, which is a little sad. But yeah, it's a card. It exists. Queen's Double has this funny little crystal thing going on, and also there's this Forbidden Memories, which is the funny PS1 game. There are no effect monsters in that game, so effect monsters are given their own unique flavor text. And Queen's Double is not very useful double of a queen, which is pretty funny because it's actively admitting the card sucks. That's pretty cool. Uh, Leghole kind of doesn't have too much going on except for its name, which I can't find any meaning for. I looked up it on the Yu-Gi-Oh wiki. There's no translation. I googled Leghole itself. There's uh there's no results. It's just Leghole, I guess. It also has the text, not a very powerful monster, despite its large fangs and spikes. So we're like, 2 for 3 on cards that admit they're dog shit, which is pretty funny. Uh, Aguchi is scary. I do not like it. Its name is Big Mouth in Japanese. Cool. And in Forbidden Memories, it is the flavor text of a monstrous bullfrog with poison spikes, which is pretty scary because I don't think that's a bullfrog. I don't know. I've seen a lot of bullfrogs. I don't know if bullfrogs look weird in Japan, and I hope you guys are okay over there. But that's not a bullfrog, Chief. I'm sorry. Rainbow flower is kind of a weirdo. Uh, it's a flower creature with rainbow colored jaw. No, rainbow colored blossoms that learn anime into its waiting jaws. So it's also the pot, because the pot has jaws. The flower doesn't. I'm pretty sure. Uh, so it's also the pot. It's not just the flower. So that's canon. And it is one eye, a different colored petals. It's weird. And then the one I think is most interesting, in my opinion, there's a Jinzo number 7. You might know Jinzo, pretty cool monster, 2400 attack, negates all trap cards. Big staple, came out in Magic Ruler or Pharaoh Servant, one of the two. And big staple at the time, really useful for just negating traps, was super powerful. But here's Jinzo number 7. It came before it. And this is number 7. Is that Jinzo number 1? Did they luck out? I don't want to see Jinzo number 4. What's Jinzo number 20 look like? Uh, Forbidden Memories also gives a bit on the Jinzo lore, the very important Jinzo lore, by stating, created in an underground lab, this artificial being occasionally goes berserk. So, if you wanted to know where the Jinzos come from, there you go. They're, like, fucking, I don't know. They're that. Yeah, they're funny, aren't they? So also in Metal Raiders was this cool card, Barrel Dragon. It's a dragon with 3 guns strapped to it. That's pretty cool. And once per turn you can target one monster your opponent controls, toss a coin 3 times, and destroy it if at least 2 of the results are heads. I'm kind of a sucker for coin costs and entirely random effects. This is pretty funny. I like it. Um, but what makes this card sort of interesting in my mind is the fact that since the card is literally a dragon with 3 guns strapped to it, it sort of had to be censored for the worldwide release, right? So they didn't entirely take away the guns. They sort of just made them like super magic nerf guns. And honestly, I think I kind of like the censored version more. It sort of gives this illusion of power. Like there's lightning cracking all over the place. It looks like you're about to die. Um, or I guess rather, if you take a look at the censored version, the background is really dismal. The colors are very dull. The sort of the chambers and the revolver sort of give it the sort of the illusion of having like blank soulless eyes. Barrel Dragon looks like an antagonist monster. It looks like something that's gonna kill you. While the censored Barrel Dragon, it's bright, it's powerful, it's crackling with energy. It looks like a monster that you would play. It looks very protagonisty, if that's how to say it. So I sort of appreciate both versions of the card, and I think it's sort of like one of the few censored variations that are just really interesting in that sense. So yeah, cool card. Good job, censoring team. Good job, you did it. Wow. So we have another censorship card. There's Destiny Board. It's an alternate win condition card, which I think it's like the second one ever printed, other than Exodia, obviously. Smile. Uh, it's an alternate win condition that essentially lets you put one Spirit Message spell card per turn on the board until you spell out Final in the TCG, which is the center version of the original, which just spelled out Death. It's pretty gimmicky. It's kind of really shit because you're just putting in like what 5 spell cards that do literally nothing. It's pretty cool. Uh, you have to play them in order, but you don't actually need them in order to win. So you could theoretically spell out hated in the Japanese variation if you had some way to like shuffle your back row. I don't know if that exists, but if you can move all that stuff around, you could spell out hated, which is kind of funny. But yeah, that's about it. It's something, all right. Fucking bad card, dude. I don't know. Lame. Uh, so Legacy of Darkness has a bunch of little strange little cards. The first one I will talk about is Spirit Ryu. In Legacy of Darkness, a big theme around the common cards of the set were this brand new type of monster. So cool. They were spirit monsters. This is back then where instead of having archetypes, they sort of gave it a brand new type, sort of like with Flip, like Flip Gemini, Toon, and of course Spirit. So Spirit's monster's entire thing is they couldn't be special summoned, and once they were played, in the end phase of the turn that they were played, they bounce back to your hand. So obviously this is sort of a double-edged sword. I think they're pretty neat in concept. They were never really that good. I think the best card they ever had was Tsukuyomi, which is super useful in the GOAT format. I'm pretty sure. I'm not exactly remembered why, but I know it was good. And Spirit Ryu, despite being introduced in the same set and literally having Spirit in its name, it is not a Spirit monster. Its effect is during your battle step, if this card battles, quick effect, you can discard one Dragon Monster to the graveyard. This card gains 1000 attack and defense until the end of the battle phase, which is neat because also there were spirits. I think I remember dragons were also kind of a big support aspect of this set too. So Spirit Ryu was a card with spirit in the name that was a dragon support card, which yeah, dude, sure, go for it. I don't know. All right, I feel like this one is sort of iconic, but I'm gonna go over it anyways because it's so crazy. Convulsion of Nature. This card rules. As long as this card remains face up on the field, both players must turn their respective decks upside down and proceed with the current duel. I don't know, I find this effect so insane because it is like it's hard to put into words because it's just sort of strange. Look at it. Look at this effect. Cuz obviously you get to turn your deck upside down and it's not like the top of the deck turns into the bottom of the deck. No. The bottom of the deck is still the bottom of the deck. You're just drawing from the bottom of the deck. So any cards that go to the top of the deck go to the bottom of the deck, and vice versa. Um, so it's useful for that, and you also get to see what cards you draw prematurely, as well as your opponent. So it does a whole bunch of stuff, and it's such a strange, unique effect that I don't think is replicated anywhere else. That it's just kind of cool. I don't know. I respect it. It's a very sick card. Also, it's called Convulsion of Nature, and there's a bunch of natural disasters happening. There's like a volcano is erupting, there's a tornado, it's flooding, the earth is shattering, everything's dying, it's over. And the power of this card, it's you flip your deck upside down, and that's it. That's all it does. It's so underwhelming and just bizarre for what it does, but it's really cool. I don't know. It's interesting for sure. It's definitely interesting. So moving on to Pharaonic Guardian, we have this card. It's a question. It's another of those sort of self-explanatory weird cards like Convulsion of Nature. When activating this card, your opponent cannot check cards in the graveyard. Your opponent calls the name of the first monster found at the bottom of your graveyard. If he/she calls it right, the monster is removed from play. If he/she calls it wrong, the monster is special summoned to your side of the field. This card's neat. It plays into this sort of trivia gimmick on the card, the question itself. Like, oh, can you remember what card was first discarded to my graveyard? And if you can't, ooh, it's back now. And I think that's really fun. So it's if your opponent has a good memory, this card won't do anything. But if they're sort of being like a bit aloof per se, you get a free monster. I think this is such a fun little card. Also, something that's sort of common in the earlier spell cards, or even now, because this card hasn't been eroded to adapt to this. The card text mentions he/she, so if you happen to be non-binary, you are immune to this card, as well as a whole bunch of others, which makes being non-binary an objective advantage in Yu-Gi-Oh, which I think is pretty cool. So here we have a trap card. We have Pyro Clock of Destiny. Move the turn count forward by one turn. The turn in which this card is activated continues as normal. So this is a crazy specific effect. Something you might something that's more common in Yu-Gi-Oh is for cards to activate during the standby phase, but this card doesn't actually affect that. Which when I first saw it, I thought like, oh, this is a bunch of utility with any card that activates in your standby phase, or any card that activates during your opponent's standby phase. Like I know there's that one card which name slips my brain right now that lets you like draw up to 4 cards in your hand, but then has you discard the same amount in your standby phase. So like, oh, you can use this card, move the turn count forward, standby phase procs. They discard that. They discard again. Uh, that's not how this works. It's specifically the turn count. So there are only like a handful of cards that actually get affected by this, and especially in the early times, there's only 2 cards that were affected by this. Actually, I might be wrong on that. There's Light Force Sword and there's Swords of Revealing Light. I'll have to check really quick. Let me check Final Countdown. Uh, no. Okay, yeah, Final Countdown wasn't out. But when this card came out, only Light Force Sword and Swords of Revealing Light actually worked, and those are only cards that really affected you. So let's say if your opponent played Swords of Revealing Light, you could activate Pyro Clock of Destiny, move that turn count by 1, but obviously this is not very good because you could also just play MST, which along with doing 8 billion other things could also just destroy Swords of Revealing Light and you don't have to deal with it anymore. Um so yeah, Pyro Pyro Clock of Destiny. Obviously later Final Countdown you could use it, move that turn up by 1, I guess, but it's an interesting little card that I kind of would like to see it have more utility. Because right now it's very limited, which is a shame. But it's fun. It's cool. All right, for Magician's Force, I only have like 2 cards, but they're both technically in like the same category. They're like their own mini archetype. There's Aitsu and Koitsu. I think that's how you say it. Um, Aitsu is a level 5 normal monster with 100 attack, and Koitsu is a level 10 effect monster with 200 attack. Pretty cool. And essentially, though Koisu has like an entire paragraph of effects, it's a union monster, so you can just equip it to Aitsu, and it gains 3,000 attack, which is sort of the whole thing with these. They're very strange on their own. Aitsu looks like he has healing problems, apparently, and Koitsu is cheeked up and has this sort of yoga pose happening. So they're obviously strange. They're flying on paper airplanes. They're just very weird cards. Uh, their names are also pretty interesting. Aitsu translated means that's other guy, and Koitsu translated means this guy. So it's essentially like it's just like, oh yeah, it's that guy. And I think it'd be funny if they like kept the translated names like, oh, it's this guy and that guy. But it's interesting for sure. But the most interesting thing is that these are technically from a video game franchise, sort of like if you've ever seen Gradius, or I'm pretty sure BES is also a Gradius thing. But Aitsu and Koitsu are actually from a Gradius game, technically. They're from Sexy Periodus. I don't even know how to say this, dude. Parodius? Periodus? I don't know. Periodus is this essentially it's a parody by Gradius. It's a parody of Gradius by Konami, and Sexy Periodus is the 5th installment of Periodus, and it's Periodus but sexy. It's sort of just it's pretty much kind of I don't know. Is it porn? It's not porn, I don't think, but you're getting there. It's very fan servicey, and Koitsu and Aitsu are 2 playable characters in this game. Little red man, little blue man. So these 2 cards in Yu-Gi-Oh, which is obscenely censored, nothing remotely scandalous is allowed in the worldwide variation. These 2 cards are essentially from a porn game, and that's awesome. They managed to sneak by the borders of Zorn and just they're here and they're very funny. I really like these cards. These guys rule. So I've tried to avoid talking about like strictly bad cards who are neat for their badness, just because everybody has done it. Everyone's seen the Duologue video. Everybody gets the joke by now. Uh, But I do have to talk about this one card because it's very interesting in the way that it's utterly horrible. It's very unique, per se. We have Mirage Knight. Uh, it's utterly baffling. To. Alright, okay, let's go over how you summon this card first. That's the first thing. How do I get this card on the field? You can't summon it normally. You have to. First things first, you must create uh, Dark Flare Knight, which you need to have Dark Magician and Flame Swordsman, who is a fusion card. Let's say you were not running for some reason any fusion substitute monsters. Let's say you're doing that, all right? So you have to use Polymerization on Misaki the Legendary Swordsman and Flame Manipulator to create Flame Swordsman. So you're already going -3, all right? Then you have to fuse Dark fuse Flame Swordsman of Dark Magician, so you're now -5, and you've managed to summon Dark Flare Knight. So, which is an awesome card because it has less attack than Dark Magician, but it does nullify any battle damage you take, which I don't think it's worth the -300 attack, but it's something. It is a thing. So then, once you've gone -5, you have to have Dark Flare Knight destroyed specifically by battle. So it cannot be blown up by like Raigeki, Mirror Force, whatever. Any of the destruction cards, any removal cards, doesn't work like that. You have to have it destroyed by battle specifically and sent to the graveyard specifically. So if you faced like Megamorph Crazy Beast or something, this would not work. You would not be summoned. So after you do all this, you get Mirage Knight. Mirage Knight is summoned from your deck or your hand, not your graveyard. If it gets hit by, like, I guess, Delinquent Duo, Confiscation, whatever, you cannot use it. You get an 1800 beat stick with no protection against card effects. It gains 5 gains attack equal to the monster battle's only during damage calculation. It's like, okay, that's pretty good. You essentially just beat over anything, right? Well, yeah, that would be cool. But it banishes itself after fighting one time. So you do all of this. You go -5. You get Dark Flare Knight destroyed specifically by battle. And you summon this card. You hit one thing, and then you die. That's it. That's all you get. It's insane. What were they thinking? This is absurd. This is infeasible. So you have to carry around this dead card, summon 2 fusion monsters. There's just so many requirements. It's utterly baffling that this card even exists. It's so strange. Why would they do this? It's messed up. It's sad, dude. I'm sorry. It's upsetting. On to the last set here, and the very first monster I want to cover is Orca, Mega Fortress of Darkness. First things first, it's a Fortress of Darkness, water type monster. Cool. Thanks, Konami. Alright, so the whale is a warship. And like a warship, it does in fact have weapons, but those weapons do in fact need ammo. Specifically, ammo in the form of Torpedo Fish and Cannonball Spear Shellfish. So these two are pretty much the same card. They have 1000, 1000, they are water-type monsters, and they have the effect that while Umi is on the field, they are unaffected by spell cards. It's an acceptable effect if the monsters weren't, like, pitifully weak, so they're not really going to be doing much by themselves, fortunately. However, Cannonball Spear Soldier is a level 2 water aqua monster, which means it works in wetlands. Cool, I guess. If you wanted to do that, you sure could. So their main synergy here is tributing with Orca Mega Fortress. If you have Torpedo on the Fish or a Cannonball Spear Soldier, you can tribute them and destroy one monster if you tribute Torpedo Fish, or one spell or trap card if you tribute Cannonball Spear Shellfish. So this is neat. Both Torpedo Fish and Cannonball Spear Shellfish are both like sort of weapons in themselves. Obviously, Torpedo is a torpedo, and Cannonball Spear, I don't know what that is, but it's a Cannonball Spear. It's 2 weapons in 1. That's pretty cool. So, you have this cool thing. You can put Orca on the field, summon them, you tribute it, like loading it into the thing, and then you fire it, and you kill something. That's pretty neat, in my opinion. That's sort of what the main interesting part about this card. Unfortunately, it's not really that great. You have to cam around the ammo cards, which aren't very good on their own. and you also have to tribute from the field. So you are going for one, which is solid, but you are losing out on your normal summon if you like can't get them in the field of other way, like if Mama Grizzly gets owned or something. So it's not a great card, but I think it's a really fun concept. Also, fun little trivia for you. This card appears on Salvage, which lets you snag 2 water monsters from the graveyard with less than 1500 attack, which, funnily enough, which, funnily enough, both Torpedo and Cannonball fall under. That's cool. Pretty neat. Yeah, that's all I have for you. Is anyone actually still here? I'd be pretty shocked, considering the squeaker voice I still have going on, unfortunately. Maybe drop a subscription to deliver that sweet, sweet dopamine to my brain. I mean, I don't. You don't have to. I don't know. Whatever. I have a lot that I cut out for time and quality's sake. So if this was remotely enjoyable, tell me in the comments. And if it wasn't, tell me to go tribute myself to inflict 500 damage to the opponent. Cool. Thanks. Bye bye. Have a nice whatever.